Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into a look at Tazavesh Streets of Wonder. That's difficult for me to say. Tazavesh Streets of Wonder, which is the initial section of Tazavesh. Of course, you have Soleil's Gambit as well, which is the latter half. This first half is quite a lengthy section of the dungeon. You have 38 minutes on the timer, which is very, very strict based on the current tuning of this dungeon, because there's a lot of bosses, there's a lot of trash. The thing with this dungeon right now is that it feels like Fortified and Tyrannical are both active, and it's bolstering. So it's really difficult to time this week one. A lot of guilds have been struggling to time this on a plus, or a lot of players have been struggling to time this on a plus 15. So as of the conducting of this key, it has since been majorly nerfed across the board. A lot of like trash and bosses, I believe. So it is going to be a lot easier as of this video, but some of this trash still deserves taking a look at some of these bosses. So when you get into this first area, you're going to have a couple mobs that you want to look out for. These mobs don't really do anything too serious, but you have the specialist, I believe they are. Yeah, the specialist right now doing this spark burn. Of course, interrupt that if you can, but eventually they will do a stasis beam. Like every 4th or 5th cast or so, they'll do a stasis beam that will go on a specific player. There we go, stasis beam here. If that carries out, that will go on a specific player and it will lock them in place, and you want to just basically interrupt the cast as soon as possible. I've noticed though, when we had a hunter and a warlock, every single time it went on one of our pets. I don't know if that's a way that you can cheese it, but maybe bring 3 demo locks and then that ability never impacts any one of your players and it will just go on imps. So yeah, that's just an ability you want to look out for. Apart from that, these security guards, they've got their hyperlight beam. You just want to soothe that off or like stun it. I don't think it's too major. Just basically just soothe it. It's fine. And next you have the overseer. So overseers are going to put down these big long beams that if you run into will kill you. And it does it periodically. Beam splicer there. So you want to make sure that you're just moving out of melee, watching out for those being like thrown at players. I think they can go on ranged and melee, so just be careful of those. But that's basically the whole thing. Watch out for the stasis beam. Watch out for the highlight barrier there. And then also watch out for the like melee AoE mechanic, or you know, ground effect that you need to dodge with the swirling beam, right? So that's pretty much all of the trash in this first area of the dungeon. I'll get us through just to the boss here. We end up clearing a little bit of extra trash just to give us room. So this Portal Mancer isn't actually the first boss. He does have some unique mechanics, but it's not actually the boss. So don't pop anything, any like big specific cooldowns. You can maybe get away with using 1 minute. You can absolutely use like 30-second cooldowns. There's a couple mechanics. Just interrupt his cast and just dodge these beams that are going to be plopping all or plunked down all in the room, and just dodge those. After he dies, the boss gets summoned. Now this boss has 3 major mechanics. It will put swirlies down on the ground, weapons that just spin. Just move out of those, don't get hit, they do damage, very obvious to avoid. Secondly, it has a barrier always pointed at one position, so just make sure that you are on the opposite side of that barrier so you can continue to hit the boss and not have any damage like deflection. The boss will then also collect people's weapons and throw them, so you have to go and collect your own weapon before you can attack the boss again. Right now you can see it here, so make sure you go pick it up and then you can attack. And then also there's going to be the last ability you need to look out for, Interrogation, coming up in a couple seconds. It's going to target a player at random. So far it can target any player from what I've seen except for the tank. That player, which has an arrow above their head here, needs to run away far, because the boss is then going to slowly start moving towards them with their blades whirling. If anyone hits those blades, you die. So watch out of the frontal of the boss. That's the reason why the person with the ability needs to run away, so that then you have time to kill this containment cell before the boss reaches them. If the boss reaches them, they die. You can do things like ice block and bop and things like that from what I've seen. And yeah, there are various, like, I don't think freedom works, but things like ice block and stuff does work. I don't know if turtle might work, maybe, but those kinds of things you can just use as immunities to instantly get out of it, and then you can just maintain damage on the boss. But that's basically the boss. We bloodlusted this one because may as well. There are 5 bosses, just get bloodlust on cooldown ASAP, and that's pretty much the boss. The remainder of the trash in this room is basically the same. The one thing you want to watch out for is then having to deal with 2 overseers. These will absolutely truck your tank. Have healer externals ready, have tank cooldowns ready, and try and focus target 1 down at a time. These guys will put down their beam splicers, so get ready to constantly be shuffling them around, and you can actually just start pulling them outside towards the next section of trash. But that's basically it. Just be careful of those as a tank. They will smash you. Now, we ended up going right. I think this is potentially the better option, though we'll see how routes do get created in time. Maybe there's a better option. These mobs are a couple invis mobs here. There's one here, and there's one down at the bottom of the stairs. Just be careful of those. And then there's a few of these trash packs that you got to deal with. I recommend using Inky Black Potion in this area of the dungeon, as it's really helpful to see a lot of these mob mechanics that are going to be occurring. The big one is that it's going to put a dispellable debuff on a random player. I believe it's dispellable on a random player. That person, yeah, so it's on me. I need to move out, make sure this doesn't land on anyone in particular, and I need to either get dispelled or use turtle, as you see me do. Otherwise, you take a shit ton of damage. Next, one of the mobs, I can't remember which exactly, is going to put down a large AoE ability. Just move out of it before it explodes. You have a good few seconds. In fact, let's just double check who puts that down. I think it's the wise guy. Yeah, it's the wise guy. So he puts that down and then he retreats. You might be able to stun the retreat cast, though it looks like it's under a second in cast duration. So just be careful, ready to dodge. The smugglers, also you can interrupt their spell cast. That's pretty much it with this area of trash. Again, just dodge those AoEs, get dispelled. So look out for that as a healer. Probably don't want to pull too many of these trash packs at a time because you'll have too many dispels for your healer to deal with, unless you have multiple magic dispels like multiple priests having. Apart from that, that's all of like the trash in this area. We ended up pulling a little bit of extra trash on the left hand side, and now we go into the second boss area, which is the is it Mize's Oasis? I think it's Mize's Oasis. Yeah. So that's this boss. So this boss has this area of trash has a very unique kind of mechanic to it. So there's going to be a bouncer. Bouncer doesn't let you in until you have the password. I think this guy gives you the password if you perform roles for him or perform tasks. He's going to give you an item. That item has to go to a specific market stall in this area, in this market corner. Or market square, right? So there's like gemstones, there's instruments, there's cloths, there's all kinds of books. You just have to make sure you take it to the right one. There are some weak auras that you can use, but also it'll be helpful if you just look at which one is where. Like for example, this one is the instruments. You can tell based on just the goods that the vendor has outside of its shop. So just get ready to have one person run this. I advise I advise it to not be the tank, because there are mobs, these lackeys, that do need to be tanked. They will truck your team if you don't have a tank to soak them. I advise the healer taking it, because you don't really need to heal anything during this time. Alternatively, just somebody who's really, really fast, because I think you have to do 2 or 3 of these, and then you get the password, and you can continue on with the dungeon. So the quicker you do this, the better. I would just keep moving, keep pulling trash, doesn't matter. Just group everything up. You can AoE it down when you've got the task complete. Otherwise, these mobs are going to keep spawning, and it's just going to make your life harder. The strong arms can be binding shot, they can be stunned, they can be CC'd, so do whatever you got to do to them to slow them down. If they reach the player with the goods, then I think that they like smack the goods off the player, and then you have to have somebody else do it, and it's a whole big pain in the ass. That's basically it. We take it to like 2 or 3 of the vendors, and then we get the password. Bellissimo. We move into the next section of we move into the boss room. Everyone grabs an instrument. Each instrument does a different thing, and you have a different mechanic to deal with based on which instrument you grab. Right now, I'm not sure on exactly who should grab what. I believe the tank should grab the drums. I think everyone else can kind of grab whatever. Though some are easier to deal with than others. I grabbed the saxophone because I like the saxophone. Now, there are going to be these little runes, these musical notes that spawn on the ground. When you use your special action bar ability, you get a stacking buff. I got haste, that's stacked. And then when I got 9 stacks, or 12 stacks, it turns into a 40-second buff, which gives me 25% damage done and haste increase, I believe. 25% haste and 15% damage done, something like that. And then you have 3 waves of trash, and then a boss gets summoned. These mobs don't really do anything. Just watch out for that menacing shout. Really long cast bar. Just interrupt it and interrupt some of those bolts. dodge the swirlies on the ground. And that's basically it. And then there's a tank slam. So if you have like a pet taunt swap, you could do that on fortified. I imagine it scales with fortified. Maybe technically these are boss specific mobs, so maybe it doesn't, because these mobs don't count for your trash percent. Just be aware. After that, you get like 2 waves of that. Super simple. Then you get the boss gets summoned. Where's the boss? Come on, boss. Let's go. Here's the boss, Zogron. He gets summoned. You can potentially lust this. For us, it was back up in time because it took us... We're 22 minutes into the dungeon. We're only just on the second boss. This is a very long dungeon with the tuning. They need to either add more time or they need to... I don't know, do something here. So this boss, it does a big frontal. You can see crowd control, really long cast. There's like a shield, like an icy kind of shield in front of it. That is the direction the AoE is going to go. It's a big frontal. It will kill you if you're standing in front of it. You can see somebody stands in it. They get knocked back. Also, it's going to grip everyone in. You want to make sure you move out of that. Use disengage, whatever you got to get away from the boss when it does that. And then there's the tank slam. So... tanks need to be very aware that that's coming through. On Tyrannical, that just did 50% of my tank's health. So be very careful. That will probably wipe you in higher level keys. Watch out for the frontal. Menacing shout, you kick that. Basically, a lot of the mechanics that the trash have. And then you have the spark. You want to spread and also move out. But then jump back into the boss very quickly because there are musical notes. And if you get in time and you can refresh that like debuff, then you can maintain your stacks of damage increase, which just means the boss dies quicker and you have a way better time. But that's basically the whole fight with that one. Now we move on to the next section of trash. So, come out of the Oasis. We then went to the right-hand side. Though obviously, you can go in whatever order you please. We pulled a couple of these mobs here, and we just... I don't think they really do anything, so don't really stress about them. But then we went into this like right-hand area, or we went into the Postmaster's room. Couple things. These male elementals, when they die... I believe they randomly throw at, like, they throw randomly at players. So on Fortified, that could really hurt. You want to try and focus those down because whenever your tank isn't the person taking the brute force of the mob packs, it's a bad time. You don't want random AoE damage going out on your group. So just be careful of these male elementals. Also, when you kill them, they put down a zone, which is kind of like Elasan, if you remember that fight. And it gives you massive amounts of haste, so just use that to your benefit. Try and focus those down so that then you can have an easier time killing the rest of the trash. Some of these mobs, I believe it is these sorters. Yeah, these sorters will run to these little containment vessels. You can see one right here on the left-hand side. It'll start opening the cages that are dotted around the room. Those cages have chickens in. Those chickens, if they get released, they run around. If they hit you, they stun you for 2 seconds. So you don't want to get hit by those. So what you do is you just stun those mobs, trap them, CC, Typhoon, whatever you've got as they're trying to open the cage before the cast completes, and then it will stop those mobs. They'll return to you, and then you could kill them before they do their next cast. That's basically all of the trash in this room. That's it. That's the whole thing. Eventually, you get onto the boss. The boss is quite crazy, funky, really cool, actually. So he's got like 5... shoots around the room. These are going to be activated throughout the fight, and you're going to use them to throw bombs into. So just be aware of those, take note of that. But let's start out by looking at this boss. So he's going to put down this hazardous liquid, which is a bunch of AoEs on the ground, which you can see. You want to go and soak these. However, every time you soak them, they leave a magic dispellable debuff on the player who soaked it that stacks, and it does a lot of damage, a lot of damage. So you want to either not get many stacks or have somebody like me with Turtle that can soak multiple stacks and pop Turtle and be okay with it. Though I think I even got stacks there through Turtle, so you kind of just flipped if you're not too careful. What we found, because then the boss does fan mail, which is a massive AoE amount of damage. We found that it was easier to not soak too many of those swirlies because all it does is summon this area on the ground that you can't move into. But it's kind of whatever. You have enough room in the, you have enough area in the room to just keep fighting. They do grow quite large, but a lot of the time they get thrown on places where there already are some, and you don't really care. You could probably be really space efficient with this boss, but we found just letting some of those go through, so maybe 1 or 2 of them we'd soak, maybe to keep the middle of the room clear, and then the rest of them, we just let them go through. That way the healer doesn't have a bunch of dispels and a bunch of healing to do with the fan mail, which does a lot of damage. And then also then this soak mechanic comes in as well, which you can turtle or ice block or whatever, or you can... It's physical. I remember it's physical because I watched JPC doing this and he cloaked it and he went, nope, that's physical. So that's a physical spell, so whatever you can use to like pop a defensive on that, great. But you can soak it and split the damage with your team. Now, the boss drops these bombs on the ground. You want to pick these up. They have a timer before they explode. You want to go to the active chute. You can really easily see which one is active because there's a bunch of air and paper and stuff throwing up it, right? So go and throw those bombs. Now, they are a ranged throw, so you don't have to walk all the way to it. Top tip as well, if you throw these bombs and they hit the ground, they explode and you wipe. However, you can throw the bomb to another player, and if that player catches it, then it doesn't explode, and then they can throw it in the chute. So you could have a system where you have people lined up, one person grabs the bomb, throws it to the next person, they then throw it to the person on the thing, and they throw it in the chute. But that could be too time consuming and whatever. Another thing you could do is you could throw it, disengage, or like Tiger Dash or something to it, and you could basically alley-oop yourself. So that's kind of cool. But then the boss just goes through those stages. He's got the hazardous liquids, try and soak some, not too many. Look for dispels. If you have master spell, then it's huge. Then he does fan mail, big AoE damage, though you can stand in melee, you can keep attacking, that's fine. Then he does a soak, which you can solo if you have turtle or ice block or anything like that. And then he does the bombs again, and you go and throw those in the chutes. Really super easy, really super fun. I like this boss. He's a good time. He's a good sport. We move on from there. We then need to clear a bit more trash. So we clear up towards where the last boss is, though we do still have another boss that we've got to kill before that. And this video is getting quite long, so I want to, try and speed this up a little bit. Those mobs, basically, they just do a knockback. So power kick, you can see on the tank, smashes them back. So you just want to make sure that as the tank, you're facing you're positioned up against a wall. So you only get kicked into the wall and not anywhere else. Apart from that, these mobs just need to be interrupted with a scintillate or scintillate because it applies a debuff and does damage, and you just want to be careful of those. So we position over here. We go through. There's actually like a little gap in this fence which you can get through. Means you can skip some of these mobs if you have your trash percent. We progress over to the Grand Menagerie, which has 3 bosses. When one boss gets to 25%, it summons the next boss. When that boss gets to 25%, it summons the next boss. The mechanic that Al Crux does is it does Gluttonous on a specific player that lasts like 20 seconds and does AoE damage if anyone else stands near them. Also does damage to the player. And then, of course, you just want to move out of the AoE. That Gluttonous, when it runs out, it will jump to the closest player. So you can ping pong it between the person that has cooldowns and rotate cooldowns, or you can ping pong it between 2 specific players like melee and then just make it easier, and then the range could just like stay out, whatever, or vice versa. Now, the boss also does this mechanic where orbs get put down on the ground. You have a first wave and a second wave. So what you want to do is you want to line on the very edge of the first wave so that then when that wave explodes, you can move in the location that the first wave was. That way you avoid the second wave. And that is all the mechanics of this guy. When he gets to 25%, the next guy comes in. Acolyte. Acolyte he's got 2 things that you want to look out for. The first one is this he's got 3 abilities. Purification Protocol, if you get this on you, just move out, try and use some kind of defensive on it if you can. I turtle it, which is big. It still does a shit ton of damage. He then also does this ability, this Flagellation Protocol. This is soothable, so you are absolutely going to want a soothe in this key. Basically, it puts a shield on him, you soothe the shield, and then you can interrupt him. Otherwise, he smashes your tank with this protocol, so you want to be aware of that. So you just soothe it, then you instant interrupt it. Lastly, he's going to do Venting Protocol, which spits out a shit ton of orbs in this pattern. If you take these orbs, you take a lot of damage that stacks. However, if you're the person with Gluttony, then you actually gain a stacking, I think it's a stacking damage buff, which stacks to 20. However, you can continue to soak orbs past that 20. What we found was really good is if you tank Acolyte in the very corner of the room, so that way when the orbs split out, they smack against the wall, and you can have the person with Gluttony standing in the corner just soaking up 2 immediate waves, and they instantly get shit tons of stacks, and they're super powerful, and then they can go and get the remainder of the stacks, and it's whatever. If you have them in the center of the room, they all spread out way too much, and it's really hard for the person with Gluttony to effectively soak these up. The quicker they soak, the fewer orbs they are. The quicker they soak, the more stacks they get, the more damage they do. Bada bing, bada boom. And then you just rotate that Gluttony between the 2 players. We found it was easiest to lust when Acolyte comes down, because when you have the Acolyte mechanics and also the previous guy's mechanics, it gets really, really messy when you have this AoE that you got to move out with, and then also there's other massive AoEs that you got to move out with, and it just does way too much damage. So we found that it was actually best to lust when this guy gets to, when this guy comes down, when the first guy gets to 25% damage, health. So we look to do that at some point. Yeah, here we go. So we lusted. We bring him into the corner, as I was saying. That way the person with Gluttony can stand over to, I mean, this is unfortunate that they get Gluttony and then they also get this, like, debuff. But the person with Gluttony, imagine if you're standing in the corner there, you're soaking up all these orbs super, super effectively, and then the whole rest of the group is going to be really safe. Now, when Acolyte dies, wherever he dies, his body is going to remain, and he's going to continue to pulse these venting protocols. So you want to kill him in a position that is not obstructive to the remainder of the fight for your group. When he reaches 25%, Benza Gold Fuse comes down. Benza Gold Fuse will target a specific player and will, like, stun them. So you want to make sure that that player gets, like, killed quickly, or they get their shackles broken. But also a top tip is the person with Gluttony, those orbs, if they hit that person that's frozen in place, like right here, you can see this change of damnation. If this person gets hit by these orbs, they're going to die. So the person with Gluttony during this stage should run over and stack on the person so that then they're soaking up any orbs. So that that person in the damnation isn't getting hit by orbs. So that's like a little, you know, neat little trick that you can do. And then also there's this Whirling Annihilation where you just want to basically don't get sucked into the boss. If you get sucked into the boss, you die. Simple as that. And that's everything that the boss does. Apart from that, the Gluttonies keep going. This boss is super easy, so you definitely want to lust on the first 2 and not the latter 2. The latter 2 are super easy to deal with, and you already have a damage buff anyway from the Gluttony, so you're chilling. Okay, so the last boss. Oh, we're almost there. My voice is gonna die. My throat hurts. So Soasmi. Oh no, this isn't Soasmi, is it? Soasmi is the. I think this is a bug on the name. I think, or maybe I'm being silly. I don't know. But yeah. So this boss, it's very easy boss. It's super easy, right? So there are different shapes. There's triangle, circle, square, right? Triangle, circle, square. Yes. Wanted to make sure I got my shapes right. Whichever one you take. So if you take triangle. It ports you to the other triangle. If you take circle, it takes you to circle, right? So you want to use these to your advantage throughout the fight. Couple things. The boss is going to do a quick blade here. It leaves like just a dot on the player that it hits. So just careful. Done. Defensives. And then there's going to be this ring wave, which is very much like Zymox. So it's just going to spread from one of the like portals. Just make sure you portal into the correct one. Just look out for which one it's emanating from and then try and get to one that's safe, right? Pretty simple. However, every 25% the boss is gonna split, I believe, or like is it like 60% and 30%? I think he splits. I think it's that. So yeah, here's the divide. 65%, which divides the room in half. That works as a line of sight. You cannot hit anything across that wall. So you want to make sure as a group, you're all on the same side. The boss is also then going to start casting Double Technique. This is a very long cast. It's like 12 seconds. However, there are 2 charges of it. So what you want to do is interrupt the first cast immediately. And then don't interrupt the second cast for a really long time. As you can see what we just did. So the first cast is going to go off. And I interrupt really late. But what we didn't realize is that the second cast gets immediately recast and only has the duration that was remaining on the first cast. So say it's a 12-second cast and you wait 8 seconds before you interrupt first. then the second cast has 4 seconds left. So you want to make sure that you interrupt immediately so that then you have 12 seconds to deal with the second cast, because this is 12 seconds of free damage where the boss isn't doing any other mechanics and you can basically just freely kill the boss. But we end up wiping there as a result because we didn't realize that at the time. So let's imagine we get the boss back down to where it was. So there's this divide that we got to deal with. There's this halo. Obviously, we can't just easily run across the room anymore, so we want to make sure that we're being careful with which portals we take. Boss gets down to 35% health, I believe, and is then going to divide again, and then is going to teleport and start casting its double technique. You want to make sure you get to the boss quickly so that at least 2 people can interrupt that cast within that 12 seconds or you wipe. So we've got the rings going out that we need to be careful. Yeah, so he's going to do this double technique. He's in a very difficult position, so we actually can't interrupt there, so be careful with that, and we end up having to run around to the other side. I end up taking the wrong port, and then it's just like all a bit of a mess, but eventually we get the interrupts. It's fine, and then there should be some rings spawning. What we found was easiest was having one person kind of being like a shot caller who would look out for where this ring is coming, which you can see was just there. And then like they would call go to triangle, so we'd have to figure it out. But what you can do, I mean, technically we need to get to triangle, right? So I can either go into from circle to square, square to triangle, and that will dodge it. Or I can jump to here and then just wait for square to be safe and then just take square. So I just wait. Now I take square. Now I don't have to worry about the whole triangle thing. But I think we ended up doing that anyway as a group. No, okay, yeah. So we like sort of did and then didn't. So don't feel like you need to constantly jump for safety. You can just wait for the one that you're at to be safe. And then once the one that you're at is safe, then you just take that port. But it gets a little bit hectic here at the end. So maybe this is where you look to Bloodlust at like 35% or something when it does get more hectic, because otherwise you're just going to Bloodlust, push the boss to a point where the fight gets harder, and then you're going to not have any damage for that section of the fight, which would be weird. But yeah, this is a full breakdown of Streets. It pretty much took just the length of the dungeon. Hopefully this was really helpful. I know it's a lot of information to digest, but hopefully this was helpful for you to understand what's happening in this dungeon. Thanks for watching. See ya.